This is the Tom Bigby Tales, and I'm your host, Shannon Evans. I write about a small town in northeast Mississippi called Columbus. Sometimes I write about the rest of the state. This is the next episode in the Columbus Housing Authority adventure I've been on, and the investigation about the truck that has been missing but isn't really missing. And here's the details. I did a FOIA request, and Friday I was given my content missing some things and some interesting experiences, but I digress. Let's kick into this. So the emails started with a very interesting one. The very first email mentions a company called Future Spec. Why is that important? Future Spec is a company that is owned by Rusty Walker IV, who happens to be the Ward 4 city councilman in Gulfport, Mississippi, whose name is really Ferdinand Bernard Walker IV, but he goes by Rusty. I guess if I was named Ferdinand, I might have a nickname too. And if I was the fourth, I definitely would. Anyways, Rusty Walker is supposedly paid monthly for what I'm not exactly sure by the Columbus Housing Authority to give advice on myriad of things, and I'm not sure why. But for some reason, he was paid to do a detailed justification of the local purchase of this 2024 Ford F-350 crew cab with the lift gate that they now have, but they still don't have the title to. Ferdinand's business address is a UPS store box account, and he's listed with the state of Mississippi as doing accounting, tax prep, bookkeeping, and payroll. I'm not sure why he's on retainer each month with the Columbus Housing Authority when they have a bookkeeper, they have a CPA that is someone different. They have an employee who is listed as their bookkeeper, payroll specialist, and Robert Graythree, their executive director and controller, remember he holds two offices at the same time, he is an accountant. And that was how he got hired, was because he's an accountant. And his BS is in accounting from Southern Mississippi. For some reason, they needed truck comps. This particular first email is from April 10th, 2024. And it's really interesting to me because it would seem like this would either be the ED's job or the assistant. Is really, they just pulled comps off of Carfax. It's just the strangest thing in the world. I don't know why they couldn't find somebody in Region 4, why they had to go all the way down to Gulfport to hire this person, but apparently they're paying him 4,200 and something dollars a month to find comps for trucks, among other things. But I digress. In email number two, by the way, I got over 120 emails. We have the first email between the Ford dealership and Larry Jones at the Columbus Housing Authority. Ronnie Easley, we presume that this is the actual email because in this email, and that this is from the actual Ronnie Easley, he says we do our payments through ACH transfers, and he attaches a document with the bank details for the funds to be sent to a bank that is easily traceable bank to bank and would give them all the information they need so that they weren't dealing with checks that later get sent to an individual. In email number three, we find out that that Larry gets an email from Ronnie now that states that the check should be cut to the CFO. Now, why didn't somebody bring it back to either the lawyer's attention for the housing authority or to the attention of the board that suddenly they're going from saying, hey, don't send this to our ACH account. We're going to have a check cut to an individual and he's going to send him that information. So the next email, of course, that's the scammers. The next email, they have something from Ronnie Easley that says to Larry, make check payable in the name of our CFO below to Nancy Thomas to this fictitious address of a person in Okmulgee, Oklahoma. By the way, the check later gets signed by Nancy Thomas, aka Nancy Skidmore. That's the name that's signed on the back of the check. The scammer then says, please send me the tracking number used in sending out the check tomorrow. This continues until we get to the scammers are putting pressure in. On April 30th, they sent two checks requesting a tracking number a copy of the check, etc., etc. And they're putting a lot of pressure on. They send 3 more emails. Then in email number 8, the executive director of the Columbus Housing Authority gets involved, and he tells them that they'll process the check, and he asks why can they bring the check with them when they pick up the vehicle. And in email number 9, there's a pressure from the scammers in email number 8 to send that check to the authorized CFO in that Nancy Thomas address. In email number 9, there's an email from a woman who works at the CHA to a woman named Sheila that I can't determine who she is or where she works, except that I think she's associated with Rusty Walker. And they begin conversing about the Homer Skelton issue, about the checks. Email number 10 is Dixie again to this Sheila Hosley person with a subject about the new vehicle details. And there's an attachment which has these April 24th details. That was sent on May the 2nd of 2024. In email number 11, also on the 2nd, now Rusty Walker is involved in the Columbus Housing Authority's work to pay for this. First, Sheila sends a note to Rusty that says, paperwork for new vehicle. Good morning, Rusty. Please see invoices of 62,905 for new truck at Columbus. Please approve quotes to follow. Thanks so much and have a good day. And Rusty replies, we pay no tax and nothing but the $15 title fee. So this is incorrect. Now, I'm confused. Who is we? He's not a Columbus Housing Authority employee. He might have a 1099, but he's a contract employee. He's contracted to do work. So why is he the one that's approving this particular purchase? Shouldn't that have been approved by the board of the Columbus Housing Authority? Rusty Walker is not in Columbus. He's in Gulfport, and he is not on the board. He is contracted for some nefarious whatever, okay, I shouldn't say nefarious, nebulous reason by Columbus Housing Authority. It's still not clear to me what his role is. Email number 12, there's an attachment that's a scan from Ronnie Easley at the Ford dealership back to the executive director of the Columbus Housing Authority. There's an attachment, but I can't see it. It was supposed to have been sent to me, but for some reason they left out most of the attachments. There's another email on the 3rd of May where the director forwards Ronnie's email to this Dixie person, Dixie Turner, at the Columbus Housing Authority. On May the 3rd, also, email number 14, the director sends another email. This one is to Dixie Turner, Rusty Walker, Sheila Hosley, and Larry Jones, and it is a revised buyer order, which has been sent to them by Ronnie Easley, which may or may not be the scammer. That part's not clear to me. In the meantime, again, I do not have the scan that I'm positive of. I have a scan, but I'll have to look and see if they match up. In the next email, which is also on May the 3rd of 2024, Dixie writes to the director of the CHA that if there was an attachment, it didn't come through to her. And then she figures it out in email 16. In email 17, Rusty, again, is writing on behalf of the Columbus Housing Authority back to the director, Dixie Turner, Sheila Hosley, whoever she is, and Larry Jones. By the way, Hosley's email address is The Drifters, so I don't know who or what that is. Anyways, whatever was sent to him in the attachment, the image number 001, which I don't think I have, it says, that one looks perfect. Hope it's a nice vehicle. Sheila, this is the bill in the proper amount. RW. That's from Rusty Walker. So I'm still not sure why he's the one and what Sheila has to do with it. So then we're still on May 3rd, another email from Rusty to the director, Robert Graythree, to Dixie Turner, this Sheila person, and Larry. It is an invoice for purchase of truck PDF. It was sent at 2 p.m. and it says, here it is in PDF to everyone. I don't think I have a copy of that in what I've been sent. And the attachment is invoice for purchase of truck PDF. On Email number 19, the scammer asks if the check has been cut to Nancy Thomas, tells Larry Jones that the sent revised buyer's order was sent to Robert Graythree on May 3rd, 2024. So even Rusty Walker didn't catch that this was a scammer's buyer's order, or I don't even want to think about or. On May the 3rd at 2:55, another email, number 20, Robert Graythree, the director, tells Dixie to make the check payable to Nancy Thomas, the scammer. May the 3rd, email number 21, Larry Jones tells the scammer that he needs the new retail buyer's order without the sales tax since they are exempt. So in email 22, email 23, they get, excuse me, in email 22, they straighten it all out. They order everyone to send out the checks, to write the check and make the check payable, etc., etc. On May the 6th, in email 23, there are two coded invoices from Sheila Hosley to Dixie Turner, Rusty Walker, and Robert Graythree. They are CFP coded invoices. One is to Homer Skelton Ford for that truck, and the other one is for a Patterson HVAC that is another project. Both are charged to the 2022 Capital Fund Program. Hosley asks, please send me a copy of the check voucher when these items are paid. Note the account number for the vehicle may have to be added to A&P. All right, so now we're only up to email 23. In email 24, Sheila sends something to the director and to Rusty again about the draw. Now, this is questionable. Here we go. Attached, please find draw number 10 in the 2022 CFP program. This draw is for the Patterson invoice and the Homer Skelton Ford invoice. Please send me a copy of the ELOCS verification page when this draw is complete. I'm still not clear on what her job is. There's another attached to this. We'll have to compare all my attachments at some point. See what I have and what I don't have. Email 25 comes in from the scammers on May 13th. They're demanding the tracking number for the mailed check. Dixie then emails they are all at a conference and will send the tracking number later. Later that same day, Dixie sends to the scammers and CC's Robert Graythree that there's the no tracking number, that they are going to bring the check with them when they pick up the truck. Email 27 that same day, about 30 minutes after Dixie's email, the scammers are now getting insistent that the check has to be sent to Oklahoma. Still no mention that Robert or anybody has called Homer Skelton to verify any of this and to see if it's what's going on. A week later, the scammers email again, and this time they said that the check did not clear after deposited. Now, if you have several $100,000 in the bank, why would a check bounce? If you were told by someone that your check had bounced or that it had not cleared after it was deposited, wouldn't you call your bank immediately and ask what's going on? Wouldn't they have caught the scam if they had done that? This is pretty interesting that nobody on May the 21st, 2024 at 1:48 in the afternoon realized that something was not right. Later that same day, about 30 minutes later, Dixie forwards an email from Larry Jones about this alleged bounced check to Robert Graythree. But it had already been sent to Robert Graythree from the scammers. At the next day, the scammer sends another terse letter to Larry Jones, who's I think the maintenance director, that they say, oops, sorry, the check cleared. They have a new accounting team, and they use a lot of poor grammar that could possibly be someone who's a non-native English speaker. They say the check is ready for them. They just have to let them know when they want to pick it up. Later that same day, on the 22nd, Larry forwards that email back to Graythree and to Dixie Turner. And then we don't hear anything more. There are no more emails about this truck, and nobody thinks about it between May 23rd and July the 2nd. There are no emails in June. None. Now we have email 35. This too is from the scammers to Director Graythree. And this one is most disturbing. I'm going to read it because it just makes no sense. Ronnie Easley sends, quote, an attachment from Natasha Hammond at HomerskeltonHQ.com. The City of Columbus check has been returned again. The first check returned twice. Now the second check is returned. So I got a question. How many checks did they send? This says that there are 2 checks that were sent to these scammers, but we only know of 1 check being sent to the scammers. If this is true, they sent 2 checks and both of them were returned. Why on July 1st, Monday, July 1st of 2024, why did Graythree not immediately turn around and call the bank and ask what was going on with the checks? And why is there no mention of a second check anywhere as having been sent to the scammers? Now I'm really confused. On email 36, Graythree sends this email to Turner and hands it to Turner. There's an attached PDF, which I don't have. I still want to see why neither check cleared the bank, allegedly. What is the second check? Where's the tracking number on the second check? There is nothing. There's not even a copy of this second check anywhere. Why would 2 checks have been sent? The first one didn't clear. Why didn't they go to the bank and call about it? On July 2nd, 2024, email number 37 was sent from Robert Graythree to Rodney at Homer Ford. However, he had a typo in the address and it never gets through. And the same thing with with the next email, it also bounces on July 2nd. Finally, Robert sends to Dixie Turner that the April 29th email chain about the address for the distribution of funds payment, the fraudster, the one that's going to Oklahoma. In July 2nd in the afternoon, we have Robert Graythree sends Ronnie Easley at Homer Skelton Ford, and he tells him to see the email with the Oklahoma address below. On July 3rd at 11 o'clock, Dixie Turner then emails Robert Graythree with a memo to the board about the Ford issue. There is an attachment there again that I don't have, but she references conversations that she heard. So this must be the beginning of when they go to the board to report that they think they're being scammed. So Dixie is giving her side of the story of what she knows to be true so far. And later that day, another email is sent from Robert Graythree to Rodney at Homer Skelton Ford, and he forwards the scammer's emails with the Oklahoma address for the quote CFO. Now, email 47 is the director at Columbus Housing Authority sends an email to Tanya Wells. I believe she's with the bank, and it has several attachments, which I don't have. And he says, "Dear Tanya, please see email below regarding the return check from the dealership." And I don't know what the attachment is. I presume it's the scammer's email, but I'm not certain. Tanya is with Trustmark Bank, with whom the Columbus Housing Authority has their checking account, and she says she acknowledges receipt of the email. That is July 3rd at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. The next email is July 15th, email number 49, and this one is pretty damning, and it is from the actual person at Homer Skelton Ford named Rodney McGuire, who's their controller. This is not the scammers. This Monday, July 5th, 2024 at 9:11. Good morning. I wanted to reach out to you about our issue with the outstanding money. There are several things I need to point out. We've done business with you for years. It is not appropriate for a company to have a check written to an individual and then deposit it into a person's account. No one called Ronnie's number, your long-established contact person, to confirm this change in payment. The email that was CC'd was misspelled. The person, Nancy, was referred to as he. All of these are red flags that this email was bogus and needed further verification. Any information that is sent by email should always be verified by a person that is previously known with a person that relates to the business and is known. Due to these things, we cannot issue a title to you until we are paid for the outstanding balance. Homer Skelton Ford, who your contract is with, has not been paid. Please advise when payment will be sent. Thank you, Rodney McGuire. Wow. That's number 49. Number 50 is it appears that Gray 3 forwards Rodney's email to the attorney for the CHA, who is Jeff Turnage. Email 51, Robert sends something else to Turnage that has four message attachments, which I do not have. I presume they are text messages off his phone. Again, there's more so on July 15th, there are one, two, three, four emails from Gray 3 to Turnage that appear to be just attachment of messages. Actually, there's more. Woo! There are five of them. Six. There we go. There's six of them. And then on July 15th, also, Gray 3 emails Jeff Turnage again, and there are some attachments. Again, I can't see any of these. So there are at least 10 emails that were sent on July 15th that cannot see the contents of because it's just forwarded messages in the form of attachments. So despite my FOIA, I do not have those attachments. Then on July 15th, in email 61, I'm going to open that one and read it to you. From Rusty at FutureSpec to Jeff Turnage, Robert Gray 3, and Sheila, coding for grant on truck. So I'm presuming that the truck was paid for out of a grant, which is a whole nother layer of complications to this. But this suggests some unusual movement of money. It says we need to get this out of CFP. That is a coding on their bookkeeping. I think a JV can handle it. Don't know what a JV is, but we can't do it until we spend some more money out of the CFP. So there is something there we can, I believe the word omitted would be show. It was alternatively spent on. Talk soon, Rusty Walker. So I'm not really sure why the councilman from Gulfport who owns FutureSpec as a consultant is telling the executive director how to code things and how to move things around in the CFP. The next emails, Robert Gray 3 to Rusty says he'll get with Sheila and have her revise the draw. And then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 emails between July 16th and July 17th that are completely redacted. And then later on July 17th, Gray 3 sends another email to Rodney at Homer Skelton Ford. It's a 7-point letter, and I'm going to read it. This one is very interesting. So this is the Columbus Housing Authority director sending an email to Rodney McGuire in response to his email. Dear Rodney, I have your email of Monday's date asserting there is outstanding money due your dealership. I will address your points one at a time in the order that you wrote them. 1. Yes, CHA and Homer Skelton have done business for years. 2. It might not be appropriate for a company to have a check written to an individual, but we have an email from the email account of Ronnie Easley directing CHA to write the check to Nancy Thomas, who was identified in the emails from Ronnie Easley's account as being the CFO of Homer Skelton and directing payment to her. 3. You say nobody called Ronnie. This is not true. I called Ronnie by phone and spoke to someone who said he was Ronnie Easley on April 2nd and April 23rd. The calls were at 2:14 and 3:04 respectively and were calls from me to him at, and a number is given. On April 23rd, he confirmed that Nancy Thomas was to whom the check was to be paid and where it was to be mailed. We have an itemized phone bill showing the calls. Moreover, when Larry Jones, head of maintenance of the CHA, went to the dealership to pick up the truck, Ronnie Easley asked Larry about the check. Larry called back to the CHA, and CHA sent Larry an electronic image of the check to Nancy Thomas. Larry showed the check to Ronnie Easley, and he said the computer system was down, and he was good with Larry taking the truck. The emails directing CHA to remit payment to Nancy Thomas were absolutely from Ronnie's account. We've looked at it and had some IT folks look at it, and most certainly the email was from his email account with Homer Skelton. Perhaps there was a red flag, but that is why we called Ronnie's direct number. We paid to an email from the email of Ronnie Easley from his email account with Homer Skelton. It certainly wasn't the CHA's fault if someone hacked into your computer system, which is what we believe has happened. CHA did what it was asked to do, and we firmly state that Homer Skelton needs to send Columbus Housing Authority the title to the truck. Wow. They want the truck even though Skelton has not been made whole. Wow. And then we're back to more redacted emails, which I have a bunch of. And then we have Dixie forwarding letters from the scammer to at the Nancy Thomas address that we've read earlier. She forwards those to Robert Graythree. He must have lost his, or maybe they were trying to collate them. Then on July 26th, the attorney emails Crystal Utley, who works for the AG office for the state of Mississippi, and he tells the AG's office a little bit about the scam. And apparently, he has completed a form for the scam issue and has sent it in. Crystal Utley Sequoia tells the attorney in a return email to contact the chief of investigation of public integrity and ask, has the application been submitted online with the report to her office. Turner insists that they are victims and of the crime, and he's not certain that the PID was the right place. She refers to him to the restructuring of PID, combining with criminal prosecuting, and it would appear that they submit the form. And then I have a whole bunch of more redacted emails between Robert Graythree and Jeff Turnage, the attorney. And then we start in August 27th. There's an email from CHA to Rodney at the Ford dealership, and they start having a conversation to come up with a legal plan where there is a settlement agreement. Now, we believe that the settlement agreement, based on these emails and what I have been told by the attorney, is that they would they would pay half of the truck. So that's another $30,000 from Columbus Housing Authority. And nowhere in these emails does it say it, but according to the attorney, the Columbus Housing Authority, if an insurance claim pays, then that money will go to Homer Skelton, and it will be either their insurance money or the CHA's insurance money. It's not clear who's going to pay the other half. However, the Homer Skelton Ford is not happy with this, and as far as I know, they still have not released the title to the truck, and so the truck is sitting unused at CHA. They picked it up, but it isn't in use because they don't have the title and they can't get it licensed. Apparently, in September, there's discussion that there will be a Zoom call between CHA and the Ford dealership. And there's more redacted emails and missing attachments. And then on November the 13th of 2024, remember this all started in April, there is an email from Graythree to the Ford dealership with an attached release agreement, and he says he is awaiting Turnage, who's the attorney, and the board's approval. Now I went and looked at the board meeting minutes, and so that was 11/13 when he sent that email. On 11/14, there's zero mention of this settlement agreement in the board meeting. I looked at the board minutes from a meeting on the 20th of November. There's no mention, although there is mention of that they are facing possible litigation. Perhaps that's this. But then on the 18th of December board meeting, there's absolutely zero mention of the Ford truck in those notes either. Back to the emails. On December 3rd, the director of CHA emails back to the Ford dealer to follow up after the Zoom meeting they purportedly had. And he tells the Ford dealership that the CHA is ready to move forward with the release agreement, even though I see no response that they had any mention of this in the board meeting. It looks like there is zero board notice on this. Nothing happens the rest of December, but on January the 11th, Turnage tells Graythree that he has gotten the address and the contact information of R.D. Lasher, who was an agent with the Oklahoma Attorney General's office. Email 112 between Guthrie to Turnage is completely redacted. And then the next email, number 113, Guthrie sends to the Oklahoma agent the front and back and the tracking number of one of the checks that was supposedly sent to Nancy Thomas. And then there is a redacted email that was sent February 17th back to Homer Skelton that is completely redacted and I can't see it. In February of 2025, the director of CHA and the controller at the Ford dealership are starting to talk again, and they're asking for a few changes, a few edits. The one that they want right now is that they would like the term mutual releasing of liability added to the language of the agreement. Then finally, 2 weeks later, a red line markup of the unilateral release is sent by Rodney back to CHA, and then Robert forwards that on to the attorney for the CHA, and then we're back to another redacted email related to that email. And then there are a few things that Turnage wants to correct in the release settlement, and he decides that it might be easier if he just speaks to Ford's attorney. And then we're back to some more redacted emails. Then we get to April 24th, 2025 of this year, last month, just a few weeks ago. I called and emailed. First, I called at 2:30 on the 24th, and I asked who to contact, what their email was, what the telephone number was, to ask some specific questions related to the Columbus Housing Authority and this missing truck. With 12 hours of me doing that, the website that I referred to in the phone call was taken down. It is still down. It still says under construction. That's the Columbus Housing Authority email. Then at 2:36, I emailed Robert Guthrie, the executive director, and Jeff Turnage, the attorney for the Columbus Housing Authority. And that was at 2:36. By 2:51, Robert Guthrie has emailed Lasher, the Oklahoma agent, and asked for a status update. At 2:56 on that same day that I called and emailed them, the agent replies to Guthrie that the case is active and the investigation is ongoing. If I hadn't called, God only knows how long it would be before they contacted him again. But it would appear that nobody was chasing down that money since, when was that? January 11th, when they first reached out to that agent. They've never followed up since then to see if that agent needed any additional information. So, January, February, March, April, middle of April, end of April, before they do anything, and it's only because I've called. I find that kind of incredible. The emails from Turnage to Guthrie related to the update with Agent Lasher are all redacted. And still, they don't have a title to that truck, and nothing is. I find all this very interesting. I'm not sure what to make of it all yet. I'm going to be honest. I would love your input. I would love your feedback. I'd love to hear what you think. But it's very concerning to me that no one seems to be worried about any of the shenanigans going on with this truck. And now, as I look into these things, I find out more and more information. For instance, if our executive director is also controller, who's watching the money? If the executive director and the controller is the same person who's an accountant, and then we have a payroll specialist, why do we have this contracted person for $4,000 a month in Gulfport who works for another city? The city councilman. Actually, he's the president of their city council. That's like the mayor. And then who are all these other players that keep fading in and out? I don't know who this Sheila Hosley is or what her role is, what company she works for, or who pays her. Why is she involved? This gets more complicated and more ridiculous and less transparent the further I dig. Now, I'm not sure where I'm going next, but I do know that one of the things I'll be digging into are the meeting notes. So tomorrow, stay tuned. I'll be digging into the board meeting notes and see what we can decipher from this and see if it raises any other questions. That's it for tonight. Until next time, I'm Shannon Evans, and this is the Tom Bigby Tales.